So we've been talking about that two are better than one. So let's talk about how we actually become one. How do we come together with our spouse in this area of marriage and money? And the first point I want to make together is coming together as one. This will require leaving and cleaving. And so let's start with leaving. How do we become one? We must leave. Genesis 2:24 says, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." The point here is to put your spouse above everything, above every relationship, and that may even include your parents and your children. So let me explain here. I've seen this a lot in counseling younger married couples that a lot of times as they're starting off and getting on their feet in their marriage and their money, they've got their finances intertwined with their parents in a lot of way. And the Bible makes it clear that this is something that we should make an attempt to break away from. Hear me, I'm not saying that it's wrong or you're sinning if you are still under your parents' insurance, if you're under the age of 26, or if you are on your parents' phone plan or share Netflix with your parents. Me too. That's okay. Maybe you even bought something from them, like a car or something. Like all these things are okay. But the Bible is clear that we make an effort to break away. And why? That way that there's no weird boundary issues or dynamics and obligations that we have, and there are clear boundaries established between you and your parents. So yes, you should honor your father and mother, but over time, as you can, move away from having any financial ties to your parents or family and leave some of those situations behind and gradually become more and more independent with you and your spouse. This will allow you to become one. Again, that can sometimes feel like a sticky subject, but I've seen it over and over when spouses have their finances too intertwined with their parents, it can create a lot of unhealth. And so that's the first part of leaving. A second part that's a little bit counterintuitive is how to separate yourself in your finances from your children. Now, again, let me explain. So this is the other end of the spectrum, but oftentimes we'll see, sometimes they're older couples or younger couples who are wanting to financially support their children and grandchildren as they should. And so you're not sinning, of course, if you invest in your children's training and education and programs and college and all of those things. But part of our stewardship is to make sure that our children do well, that we support them and we teach them contentment, but that we're also putting our spouse first. That's the essence of what I'm trying to convey, is that you put your spouse first. We have to remember that we need Spirit-led wisdom on how to invest in our children with unity and in agreement. You have only made covenant with one person, and that's your spouse, not your children, not your parents. And so we should train up our children in the way they should go, of course. But we have to always be keeping in mind, how can I put my spouse first and come into unity when it comes to expenses with our children? Your spouse will be with you long after your children leave the nest. So the call in our lives is to ensure that we leave and then we cleave to our spouse. And that's the next point, is cleaving. So how do we cleave to our spouse? Again, let me go back to Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." But the reason I say cleaving is that the King James Version says, "and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall become one flesh," right? And the Merriam-Webster dictionary defines cleaving as to adhere firmly, closely, loyally, unwaveringly to your spouse, to draw into them and to come together in unity. And so that's one of the major ways that we come into unity with our spouse, becoming one, is that we leave and we cleave. Another major point that I want to make is that if you change your language, you will change your mind. And so you may have a pronouns problem. And let me describe that. Have you found yourself making statements like, "That's my paycheck, and I'm using my income to pay off my credit card because that's my debt"? Have you made statements like that? We've all done it. Do you find yourself saying things like, that was her fault or his fault because they made the mistake with her income, so I'm not using my savings from my bank account to pay off the things she bought, right? Do you see all the pointing fingers? And this type of language is a barrier for you and your spouse to come together. In order to join together and become one, you may want to start speaking like this. We will pay off our debt with our income so that we can make headway for our savings goals, which God has called us to. Do you hear the we, ours, us? And I remember sitting with a couple that they came in and they immediately, like when I received them at the front doors, they were smiling, and then they sat in my office and they were just going at it and yelling at each other. And they were talking like this division language. And it kind of just came out of me. I didn't mean to say it, but I said, "Are you guys even married?" and what they said was, actually, no. We've been living together and we've been afraid to make that step in marriage, and we haven't committed fully to each other. And then I was like, oh, well, before we talk about your money, we've actually got to go way back and talk about some of these things, and because it presents a bigger issue. But essentially, when we talk like this, we talk as if we're not even married, and yet we're called to become one flesh and into agreement. And so we can have one vision, one heart, and one mind with our finances. And I even as I say that, I want to question, do you think that's possible? Do you think it's possible to have the same mind, be in one mind with your spouse? Well, let me read you a passage in Philippians chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. It says this, "Therefore, if there is any consolation in Christ, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of the Spirit, if any affection and mercy, fulfill my joy by being like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, of one mind. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others." Now, this is a letter to a church, and so it is in that context. It's not necessarily in the context of marriage. However, we can take from that even if we're called to be in one mind, in one accord with our brothers and sisters in Christ, we can become of one accord and one mind with the person that we are in covenant with. And so that encourages me, but it does take an effort, an intentionality to not esteem myself better, but to commit myself to believing that my spouse is even above myself and putting them first in a way. And so, yes, one vision, one heart, one mind. You can actually have that in your marriage, in your money. Another great point in coming together is to make it plain. One reason a lot of couples are not on the same page when it comes to a financial vision is because they don't have financial vision in the first place. So let me share with you Habakkuk 2:2. It says, "And the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tablets, that he may run that readeth it." Again, my wife and I, we actually stick some of our goals or some of our schedule and planning on the fridge and on the bathroom mirror so that we can remember, what are we working towards again? What are we doing? What is the plan for this month, right? And so make it plain. Put it somewhere where you can see it, talk about it. And then Proverbs 29:18 says, "Where there is no vision, the people perish, but happy is one who keeps the law." Do you know who is the most successful in their marriage and money? It's actually not the couples that make a whole lot of money. Sometimes you can have someone who makes a whole lot of income, but they actually don't have a lot of vision, and so they're just kind of making money, spending money. I've seen that before. But a couple who even may not make a whole lot of money, but they've got vision. They're hearing from the Lord. They're coming together. They say, this is our plan for this year, and then next month, and then next year. And they have vision. They can make a lot of headway because they're hearing from the Lord and there's revelation. And he who is happy keeps the law. They've got something to look forward to, a standard to keep, some goals to keep accountable. Back to our survey that I cited earlier, 94% of respondents who said that they have a great marriage discuss their money dreams with their spouse, compared to only 45% of respondents who say that their marriage is just okay or in crisis. And 87% of respondents who say their marriage is great also say that their spouse work together to set long-term goals for their money. So setting long-term goals is huge. In other words, the more you spend time planning and casting vision and hearing from the Lord with your spouse, the healthier your marriage will be. So I want to go into our discussion time, but let me give you some context to how I came up with this discussion context. I was sitting with a spouse and they were about to enter into retirement age. And so they were sitting down in front of me and they were asking me questions about retirement and asking the Lord questions. And so I just said plainly, so what are your goals? What are your visions and dreams for retirement? And the husband quickly spoke up, oh, we're going to travel the world and we're going to go on mission for God and we're going to visit countries and tell them the good news of the gospel. And he got real excited and he was talking and talking. I said, okay, great. So then I said, so what is your vision for retirement? And the husband kind of looked over and it was like he hadn't considered, what is your vision? And so I asked her and she kind of said, well, I think I want to stay home and be near the grandkids and just really commit myself to our local church. Two different visions. But when they talked it out, they realized, maybe we're not on the same page. Maybe we need to submit to one another and hear one another and talk about it and make it plain. And so I had them do this. And so this is our activation, our discussion. Take 3 minutes to write down your top financial goals and priorities in order from 1 to 5, 1 being most important and 5 being least important. Then write down what you think are your spouse's top financial goals. Top 5 financial goals are priorities. And then once you've written that out, what your top 5 and what you think your spouse's top 5 are, then share. You can, check each other's work and see how accurate you were and how you were able to guess your spouse's top priorities. And if you're single, you can go ahead and write that down. What are your top financial goals and priorities? And ask the Lord for some vision and revelation on what they should be. And then once you've done that activation, if you feel comfortable, go around the table and then you can share you and your spouse's number 1 financial goal that you guys have together. So take some time now and you can dive into that discussion.